This conference will now be recorded.
Currently the chief of water and wastewater planning company-wide. So my primary role is to travel across the country helping agencies plan for policy and programmatic improvements, as well as development of capital improvement programs and organizational assessments just like this. I had two team members assisting me with this project, Dan Baker and Steve Walker. I'm going to go into some of their qualifications in just a couple slides. Go ahead, Rochelle, you can click to the next one. The project objectives overall were to conduct an organizational assessment and assess the effectiveness, recommend organizational changes to the structure, and evaluate performance metrics currently being used by the agency to track performance. Look into each department, assess the effectiveness of each one of the departments, review staffing levels, reporting structure, and as well as performance metrics for that. And then also the third objective was to take a look at consultant utilization and determine if there were areas within the agency to seek additional outside help along the lines of, design, construction, sampling and evaluation and other aspects of the day-to-day operations of the agency. Go ahead, Rochelle. Like I said, our staff provided a broad background of experience and operational expertise. I discussed a little bit of my qualifications. I've been working at Carollo for 17 years, 19 years in the industry. I've got a master's degree in environmental engineering from UC Berkeley. Our assistant PM and project engineer was Dan Baker. He's got 26 years in water and wastewater business management consulting, IT project controls, and performance assessments. He's got a master's in environmental engineering from MIT. And then another huge help on the project was Steve Walker, 35 years experience in water and wastewater treatment plant operations. He was the superintendent for 14 years for the Denver Metro wastewater treatment plant, just outside of Denver, Colorado. The treatment plant had a rated capacity of 220 MGD, and their facility covered approximately 120 acres of process equipment. He holds a grade 5 treatment plant operation certification in California, as well as certifications in Colorado, obviously. Dan and Steve were instrumental in helping form the recommendations for most of the organizational assessment.
And
moving on.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tim. I went ahead and gave you power to control the mouse, so you can go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Going into the approach to the project, the OA approach focused on observations, staff feedback, and a review of industry best practices to develop the recommendations. We started with a fairly robust staff interview process that occurred over 5 or 6 days there at the agency before the pandemic hit. We evaluated the feedback from agency employees, compared that feedback to best practices, as well as looked at NACWA studies to compare to other agencies in the United States and in California. And then from that, we suggest improvements or changes for staffing, as well as other programmatic approaches to provide benefit to the agency. Click through here. For some reason it's, okay, there we go. So feedback, we conducted 17 interviews with 46 staff members. All of the interviews were anonymous. The feedback was documented. We asked for honest feedback and discussed what works within the agency, what's not working, if staff could suggest or recommend changes, what those would be. All of the feedback was used to form and formulate the recommendations that we included in the report. We found the staff to be honest and open about what was going on in the agency, and it was definitely valuable to hear directly from them how things were going. And, every person spoke up, every group had suggestions, and like I said, it was very valuable to get the feedback. to formulate the recommendations. Like somehow it's like really slow, Rochelle. I can't.
I'm sorry, I can do that for you.
Yeah.
I changed the page for you.
Yeah, please do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not letting me change the slide, Michelle. There we go.
Oh, I guess I'm changing the size, not the size.
Yeah.
Here we go. There you go.
Yeah, you just need to make it smaller now so we can see the whole slide. Part of the project was to compare to other agencies, and there's a lot of factors to consider during these comparisons. Among those were, differing treatment processes, supporting staff from other agencies or cities. Some have administrative billing and larger engineering staff. TTSA is currently in the process of updating aging equipment. All of these agencies have varying discharge requirements, financial systems, and IT and SCADA systems. So we definitely want to keep that in mind as we look through some of the comparisons to outside agencies. Go ahead, Michelle. We used the National Association of Clean Water Agencies 2008 financial survey to understand and compare staff counts to determine, overall look at the number of staff that TTSA currently has as compared to others in the industry. You can see this list here where we looked at agencies within California, but also other states like Montana, North Carolina, Oregon. In general, total population served, we tried to group the comparisons within agencies that had similar populations. Some of the agencies in California, like Fairfield, Suisun, and West County and Oakland, had larger populations, but we wanted to take a look at how TTSA compared to other agencies in California. And overall, the minimum population was about 25,000. Maximum was 140. Total plant flows averaged ranged from 3.5 to almost 13 MGD in comparison. Go ahead, Rochelle. Looking at staffing counts across the different departments within the agency: management, admin and support, billing, collections, customer service, engineering, as well as operations, treatment, and other functions of wastewater treatment agencies. TTSA came in with a staffing count of 46, as compared to some of the other ones with larger flow rates like Fairfield and West County, who had 44 or 57 staff. South Tahoe PUD, which we looked at fairly closely, and Corolla has a good relationship with those guys. They had a staff of 66.5 full-time employees. They also do water and wastewater, so there's some differences there. In general, what we found was that the number of staff across the TTSA agency was in line with what we see across the industry, but it did require a closer look at shuffling staff members around within the different departments. And so we looked at that when we developed our staffing recommendations. Go ahead, Rochelle. We also wanted to look closely at comparisons to California agencies. I mentioned some of these earlier, specifically looking at Fairfield, Suisun, West County Wastewater District, and South Tahoe PUD. And we tried to break this down and normalize staffing counts based on flow rate to compare how these agencies look against one another. So this chart shows a breakdown of that, and you can see on the right-hand side, we looked at staff per MGD, TTSA coming in at 11 staff per MGD. South Tahoe, again, doing water and wastewater, was a little bit higher. In general, the larger agencies had smaller staff counts. But again, there's operations complexity and larger collection systems to manage and things like that that have an impact here.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. We can moving on. So looking at each one of the individual departments within TTSA, we developed an approach to share our observations from our meetings with staff and the management teams. And we broke these down into 3 areas: the strengths, which obviously are positive items within the work group and factors with which to build programs and initiatives and work efforts from. Concerns were items within the work group that may hinder growth of the agency. Supervisor, management staff, they may want to address these. And then opportunities, what did we see within the agency are areas that the agency may want to act on as they consider addressing these concerns. I'm going to walk through each one of the departments here and share our observations from each one of these, within each one of these categories. Go ahead, Michelle. We're going to start with operations. So, operations, the strengths are there's a knowledgeable staff there that's been around for a long time. They know the plans and the complexity. They know how to make adjustments needed to maintain compliance, very confident in their abilities. They're willing to tackle anything. The one thing we did notice as well was the staff, the lower level staff, there was a lot of well-educated staff with college backgrounds that were very engaged in understanding and wanting to be involved in process control decisions. The utility crew, the younger staff, were also engaged and willing. In general, we found the operations staff to be very concerned with running the plant well, and we found that to be a very strong aspect of the operations department. Concerns, there was communication of actual results against unit process performance indicators. We wanted to make sure that those results are being shared across the whole operations crew. Consistent knowledge transfer between experienced workers and new hires. We wanted to make sure that the processes that go into the operation of the plant are consistently transferred between the newer staff and the older staff. Go ahead, Michelle. Opportunities, there was several of them. Further involve operations into process and plant optimization initiatives. Refine key unit process performance indicators, KPIs, and share those with operations across the whole agency. Publish those results and demonstrate success to further drive those optimization efforts and share those results with staff across the whole treatment plant. Provide additional training and optimize interactions with the PIS system, the Plant Information System, to optimize processes and operational costs. And bolster on-the-job training programs by adding written objectives. That's going to help the younger staff understand where they are in terms of OJT type activities. And then again, continue to promote operational practices through interactions with local, state, and national organizations like CWEA, WEF, and et cetera. And then integrate, Wi-Fi and remote operations within the treatment plant through use of tablets to access SCADA data and other Wi-Fi improvements throughout the plant. We're going to go into that a little bit when we talk about the IT department. Another option that Steve suggested that they used in Denver was to use video or voice over GoPro, iPad, or similar technology to document the unique operational events that rarely occur. A lot of feedback we got was that there were certain things that happen rarely, and getting training on that was difficult for the younger staff. And so video documentation of that from the more senior level staff is something that could be implemented to help knowledge transfer at times when senior level staff may not be available for direct feedback. So in general, a number of things to build on. Moving on to the maintenance department, again, very experienced staff, well-rounded skill set. They have the tools to do the work. They're engaged and want to provide assistance, willingness to tackle any project and fix any piece of machinery there on site. A lot of pride and ownership in their ability, and a lot of long-term staff there that are engaged with what's happening at the treatment plant. Concerns: integrating historical data from within the PIS with the new Lucidity program. One of the things that's happening right now is as the agency implements Lucidity, it's tracking and monitoring the time for maintenance activities and making adjustments to the schedules based on that. So that is an ongoing program that will help sort of optimize maintenance staff operations. Limited comprehensive communication, both verbally and graphically, on key performance indicators, similar to the operations side. There was some non-industry standard remote telemetry equipment that needs to be updated, and in general, I think plant staff understand that equipment updates are on the books and going to be happening here across plant-wide. Consistent knowledge transfer between experienced workers and new hires. Again, similar to operations, communication across the board is something that could be improved on. And then moving on to opportunities, Rochelle, next slide. Establish a CMMS GIS technician position. One of the things that agencies do is hire a staff member to manage and update and be in charge of the CMMS system, as well as the needs and desires of the agency to integrate their GIS system with the CMMS. Hire somebody who's specifically assigned to manage and maintain that system. Drive asset management and cost awareness through Lucidity, CMMS, and other commercial software. Again, it's similar to tracking costs of operations and prioritizing those things. Prioritizing critical equipment repair needs regardless of an impending master plan recommendations. Continue to prioritize where equipment needs to be upgraded and coordinate those with master plans as you need, but don't let them fall by the wayside as we wait for that stuff to happen. Increase E&I group involvement in SCADA hardware maintenance. One of the things we heard was the SCADA hardware was separate from E&I, and there's a lot of, or some of the staff in the E&I group are well versed at that, and they'd like to be more involved in helping the agency with those goals and objectives. Bolster the craft-specific on-the-job training programs by writing written objectives to realize consistent knowledge transfer. Again, across the board, getting the knowledge transfer from the senior staff to the newcomers, and making sure that knowledge transfer is happening. Similar to the concerns, reevaluate the use of non-industry standard equipment for remote telemetry. And similar to operations, engage with CASA, WEF, and other national and California associations to improve training. And then the last one as well is with the operations, use the GoPro and iPad similar technology to document rare, unique maintenance events that occur. Next one, Rochelle. So engineering, this was a little bit more straightforward, eager, energetic, generally competent staff with a high level experience. They're working at the plant and at other agencies. The biggest concern was inadequately staffed for impending workload. One of the things that you may have noticed on the comparisons with other agencies, like South Tahoe PUD, they have 12 full-time engineers working on staff there. Again, water and wastewater, but still the 12 compared to the 3, there is a definite need to increase the engineering project execution abilities on an annual basis. There is a need to record as-built drawings to make sure they're easily accessible and developed. Part of the recommendations for the CMMS and GIS opportunities in the maintenance would also directly feed into that and this concern, and provide the ability to have an electronic record system that's easy to access. Opportunities, implement electronic data and document management system. I touched on that a little bit already. Consider adding additional staff prior to the impending projects that are coming out of the master plan. Consider increased consultant support for implementation of plan improvements and upgrades, staff augmentation. One of the things that's going to happen when a lot of the master plan recommendations happen is you're going to need somebody who's managing consultants and construction of those projects, which will take away the staff's current time to do that. Moving on to the next department here, Rochelle. Lab services. It's a well-educated and informed team. They're definitely dedicated to environmental protection, committed to the agency and its missions, programs and procedures in use to retain the state's ELAB certification and verification. Concerns, the workload and staffing count may not align, and the in-house evaluations of the WRD requirements resulted, in significant reduction in analysis for lab staff to conduct And then the big thing coming up is the conformance with the revised California ELAP requirements that are moving towards the NELAC Institute or the TNI standards. Compliance is expected to happen by late 2023, and that's driving a lot of changes on documentation and SOP development for labs across the state. Next one here, Rochelle. Opportunities: evaluate the current means and methods used to provide services and results. Detailing the programmatic tasks and the time required to complete may reveal opportunities to make staff available for other work. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as we move through the presentation when we talk about staffing recommendations. Mapping out workloads may reveal potential to downsize the work group. Confirming lab data management and robustness. That was one thing we talked about a lot, how PIS and other forms of data management may come into play in the future. Confirm documentations and practices with ELAP requirements and anticipated TNI requirements. That's a big one moving forward. Next one here, Rochelle, where I think we're going to admin or IT, I think. So IT. Strengths for the IT department: cost-effective IT approach. The staff there have been dedicated to the agency for a long time. They've done a good job. They have a lot of pride and ownership. They've upgraded their latest version, SCADA, to the HMI Wonderware 2014 format. They support virtual and cloud-based technologies. The biggest concerns was that, this IT department doesn't function similar to other IT departments across the country when we're talking about agency management. There isn't a lot of support for enterprise systems other than PIS and SCADA. The agency needs to conduct a cybersecurity review. The big thing is looking at and developing an IT strategic master plan to, streamline and modernize the way that information technology is managed at the agency. One of the concerns that we heard a lot from staff was limited Wi-Fi for mobile devices, and some of the opportunities we identified in maintenance and operations are related to that. Competing efforts between the PIS system and the CMMS system. One of the thoughts was, or not the thoughts, but one of the findings was the PIS system, was served its purpose very well, and it was designed to function in the plant the way it has. But with the new introduction of Lucity, there's some competing concerns there, and managing both of those systems is going to become an effort in the future. Unsupported custom development management systems for laboratory and operational data management. We need to get more on industry standards for the remote telemetry equipment. Let's see, moving on to opportunities for IT. Use an outside consultant to conduct an IT SCADA assessment and develop an IT SCADA master plan to bring the agency up to industry best practices. I mean, one of the things that we've been looking at is, we've heard a lot from management was, let's look outside the fence of, what's happening in the rest of the industry and make sure we're following in line and tracking with that. And I think the IT department is one of the areas where you have an opportunity to do that. Confirm the future of laboratory and operational data management. Again, how does PIS or a LIMS system fall into what the IT master plan may recommend? Consider using, E&I staff for SCADA maintenance and programming support. We talked a little bit about that in the maintenance department. And phase out the PIS system functionality that overlaps with CMMS. It's something that needs to be done, and you can use the robustness of the Lucidity program to its fullest extent. Implement Wi-Fi improvements, increase availability of mobile devices for CMMS use. Hit on this a couple times already. Improved Wi-Fi will benefit contractors as well when they execute future capital projects and upgrades. And the cybersecurity evaluation and implement the recommendations that come out of that review. Moving on to the admin services, talented and experienced staff with a long work history. A lot of folks in the admin department have been with the agency for a long time. And there's a lot of optimism around the new FIS, or the Financial Information System. And it's going to provide accounting with reporting improvements. Some of the concerns, minimal IT support for new the financial system, and you're sort of dependent on that single remote vendor. They're not available when you need them. You could run into challenges there. A need for in-house financial staff to support current management and administration. Most agencies have robust financial support in-house to help with that aspect of managing the agency. Opportunities, evaluate potential efficiencies to streamline workflows for approvals, increased use of electronic documentation and automation reports. And as Lucidity matures, use the increased purchasing, warehouse, and receiving efficiencies to integrate with maintenance and operations staff. That's the observations from the department review. Again, through the interviews, we got a lot of good feedback from staff on what works well, what works doesn't, and we hope we captured that in the report in those observations. So, taking that information and looking at recommendations for staffing, what we're showing here is the existing organizational structure, and it generally falls in line with the organizational structure across the industry in the United States. But looking specifically at staffing counts and some of the things we found through the evaluation, we'd like to make a couple of several recommendations here. I'll go through them. Move on to the next slide here, Rochelle. So we've got a series of tables here with suggestions, why, how, discussion, and some urgencies. Create the CMMS GIS position. We talked about that in the maintenance department. As you fully implement Lucidity, you're going to need somebody to manage that and coordinate that across the whole agency, across multiple departments. That's something that should happen. It's a high urgency type organizational change. Assess the IT organization and setting as part of an IT SCADA master plan. We talked about that in the observations. Again, implement industry best practices, refocus IT, increase enterprise system support. Create executive secretary and board clerk. Most agencies have support for upper management in order to function efficiently. That's one of the recommendations we have, changes to the staff, to the organizational structure. Moving on to the next ones here, Rochelle. Eliminate a customer service supervisor and one administrative position. Over the course of this project, there's been some staffing changes and some business process improvements have resulted in increased efficiencies, and those should be recognized in the organizational structure. We're recommending you create an additional accounting technician position to facilitate additional accounting function. Create a new associate engineering position. Talked about this a little bit in Ed's observations. Projected workloads related to master plan improvements surpass the existing staffing levels. I think that's pretty clear as when you talk with engineering staff about their ability to implement projects and the impending project workload that's coming. Next one's here, Rochelle. Modify the administrative manager's job description to include more robust financial qualifications. Agency clearly doesn't have in-house financial support, so that would just be a role title, and job description enhancement. This next one is more of a long-term thing, right-size the mechanical and E&I staff counts based on CMMS data. Talked a little bit about this. As Lucidity starts collecting data, you're going to understand where you can gain efficiencies through that CMMS data gathering. So track that and understand how that affects your staffing counts over time. Add third-party owners, advisor management, engineering managers workload. Contract services will be needed for project management, construction oversight, design build expertise, and other CIP-driven duties. That could help the engineering department implement projects over the next 5 to 10 years. Modify senior engineers' job responsibilities. With the anticipated CIP projects and the focus on project specifications, document handling, and storage, it's just a small change to the roles and responsibilities of the senior engineer. Evaluate means to change to unmanned operations. Potential to reduce staffing counts, improve working hours, have staffing on site to support construction activities. And we talk about that in the report and provide some recommendations on how to make that happen. Next one here, Michelle. So optimize lab services staffing. In 2019, the number and frequency of process analysis completed by the lab services staff was reduced. We went through and conducted a thorough evaluation of the workload. The previous lab director developed a weekly schedule that documented the tasks associated with the lab. And we conducted calculations to determine that workload is equivalent to 2.6 FTEs. With the revised California ELAP regulations and transition to T&I standards anticipated to come effective in 2020 or come effective in 2023, you're going to have to look at how your existing staff are going to manage the implementation and merging over to T&I standards. This one we evaluated, talked a lot about internally as well as with ad hoc committee, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. So Rochelle, going to the next one, to summarize how these recommendations would change the overall organization structure. You can see the elimination of a couple different roles, addition of a associate engineer, an accounting technician, the addition of the executive secretary, board clerk, and the CMMS technician, GIS technician. But again, we want to look at the laboratory staffing in a little more detail, and I'm going to talk about that next. In general, what we did was we evaluated 3 alternatives for the lab, and I'll go through those here if you want to move on to the next slide here, Rochelle. So alternative 1 was to maintain the current staffing. Maintain laboratory staff, director, and 2 chemists, provide sufficient staff to meet the 2.6 FTE requirement, provides internal staff to support ELAP and T&I certification. One thing we know about that is the additional needs for documentation and SOP development requires some help and support with that. Sampling compliance, testing, and analysis could be completed by laboratory staff. Staffing to include laboratory director and 2 chemists. Based on staffing costs, the annual cost of this alternative was about $612,000 per year. We included we included an assumption here that you're going to hire some outside consultant help to help you with the T&I accreditation support. So we also developed 2 other alternatives. Alternative 2 was to move to 2 full-time laboratory staff, which includes a lab director and a chemist 3. The 0.6 FTE support can be provided by operational staff through operational sampling. Many agencies across California have operational staff helping with the sampling to do WR required pH, DO, and temperature support, MPN, and other support, including laboratory support on the weekends. Similar to alternative 1, we're assuming you're going to need some consultant support to convert from ELAP to T&I certification. Annual cost for this alternative is $445,000. And then the third alternative is to go to 1 laboratory staff and full contracted sampling analysis. So this one assumes that samples will be collected at the plant and analyzed by an outside certified T&I lab. 1 laboratory director level staff member responsible for compliance reporting and analysis of water quality control. Again, similar to alternative 2, operation staff to support the lab on the weekends as well as in operational sampling. And the sampling analysis will be conducted by a national T&I certified laboratory. Similar to the other alternatives, you're going to need some help with ELAB to T&I conversion. So those are the 3 alternatives that we included in the report, and those are to be discussed, similar to what LaRue was saying previously, by the board and agency staff to make a determination on which alternative to choose moving forward. So we went through, I went through a lot of information, observations, and staffing recommendations. To summarize, overall the staffing numbers and organizational structure are generally in line with industry norms. However, realignment of some staff numbers within the departments may be required. The current staff are well qualified, capable, and enthusiastic to meet the agency's objectives. That was very clear through the interview process. Staffing recommendations focused on additions to administration, technical, and engineering. Comprehensive planning of the IT department is required to meet industry standards and modernize. That was fairly evident through our evaluation. And then the last one was evaluation of laboratory staffing to provide alternatives for agency considering optimizing performance and mitigating risk. So that summarizes the overall project. Most of what I talked about here is included in the report. And with that, I'd be open to questions from the board.
Before we have questions from the board, I'd like to make a couple of comments. Steve, Dan, and Tim, your presentation here has been absolutely outstanding. I think your credentials and your ability to do the job that we hired to perform, your credentials are impeccable, and what you've done for us with the 17 interviews and the 46 members of the staff to participate and compare with California state agencies and that are similar to ours, as well as taking us to another level and comparing us to some other agencies on the national front. You guys have done an absolute outstanding job here for the agency, and I want to commend you for your detail and your complete analysis for the workload that we've asked you to perform. So once again, thank you very much for outstanding presentation. LaRue and Rochelle, what I'd like to do is this presentation is drawn some interest from members of our staff at the Olympic Valley Public Service District. I would like this presentation to be available in an easy format, if that's possible, for members of the public and or members of the member agencies to be able to draw up this presentation in its entirety so that they know and understand the detail and the thoroughness of Carrillo and what they've done to perform our organizational assessment. With that, I'd like to open it up to any board comments or questions at this time. David, do you have any questions or comments in regards to the presentation?
Yes. In that Manning detail where you were talking about the lab particularly, I didn't see a breakout in the comparison to other agencies page. How many people do these other facilities normally have in their lab?
It depends, but in general, it's 2 staff members seem to be the norm. So, for example, South Tahoe has 2 staff members. It didn't include it in the breakdown. In general, it was around 2 to 3, depending on the size of the agency. Yeah.
Okay. I have.
Well, let me just add on to that, David. There are agencies across the state that do operate with a single lab director style, similar to Alternative 3. Inland Empire being one of them.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, back to one of the concerns in information technology, the Wi-Fi for mobile devices. That seems like an easy fix, is it?
Yeah, I'm assuming it is. I would, defer to Robert and the existing IT staff to, discuss the specifics and details about that.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay, moving on, Director Lewis, comments, please.
It seems to me a lot of, the Carrillo time. I mean, a lot of it is with the lab. One of the things I'd like to see as far as evaluated a little bit more, whether staff can do this as far as, just if we're looking at all three alternatives, we need more background information on, especially the alternative number 3. I want to know what agencies have outside lab testing, how it works, what efficiencies it is, what their wastewater discharge requirements are, how much compliance, what percentage of compliance they get. My question is, looking on it, if you're looking at outside, do we get another set of eyes looking at this? Is that a positive outcome with the number of questions we constantly have raised about the lab situation that we're currently in? Would that satisfy the public a little bit more as far as more transparency if there's an outside lab doing a lot of the work as opposed to in-house? I just like some of those questions reviewed and answered.
Sure. We discussed a lot of those questions, Director Lewis, in our ad hoc committee meetings. Obviously, like I said, in the comparison of both agencies, all of your thoughts on WDR comparisons and compliance play a role in the decisions. We have shared with agency staff a number of contacts at other districts or municipalities that operate within each one of these different alternatives, and I'm more than happy to share those contacts with you and talk directly with them about how they function. The TNI certified labs, do provide a level of certainty when it comes to sampling and analysis of those samples. However, you do take some of that out of the hands of your own agency staff when you go down that road.
Okay. Well, the TNI requirements in all three alternatives here are a must as far as I'm concerned, as far as meeting, the new requirements. I know we have till 2023, but why not get on and go forward with the proper staffing to have that? One other question with regards to, alternative 3, I look at, okay, you got all your eggs in one basket with one person. Is operational staff able to fall back and take that job if that person leaves the operation or is not there to do it? Obviously that person takes a vacation once in a while. Are we left without any lab oversight there at all? Does operations take over for that?
Yeah, that's the model right now. Currently the lab staff operates underneath the operations department, and if there was something to happen, operations would take over that role. I think your concerns are they're valid ones. In terms of just limiting yourself to one staff member. Yeah.
Right. Alternative 2, looking at alternative 2, you have at least 2 individuals there. You have a fallback position there again. Is no matter what, we need to bring either bring up or hire a person that's going to meet all those new qualifications for our ELAB requirements. Those are in all 3 alternatives. There's no question that we need to evaluate that lab director position so we can meet the future requirements for that?
Yeah, one of the things that's included in all of those alternatives is consultant support for TNI certification. A lot of the agencies that we talk to that are going through this, do reach out for help with specialized contractors that help you with understanding the documentation requirements, SOP requirements. In the short term, you're going to need help with that, whether it's provided by agency staff or outside consultant support. And the roles and responsibilities of your lab director will certainly change when that comes about. It's not only providing support for, getting the agency up to speed, but it's also running tests through the TNI certification process that you're going to need support with. So whether you keep 2 staff or 3 staff or 1 staff, you're going to have somebody helping you through that process right now. And I know the agency is currently engaging and understanding what that process entails.
Bob, going to the other departments, the senior engineer, and going, as far as the CIP projects that are accounted for in the future, being able to handle those. Obviously, one of the things you could use outside consulting during that period of time, as opposed to hiring another person in that position. I'm sure, there's enough different outside consultants to look at that, but and then the GIS seems like we really got to look at that, and cybersecurity. All those items that in that report that we need to take a look at. Not only the lab, but those other items are critical to the operation of the plant. The cybersecurity really flashed a light on me as far as that goes. With information technology the way it is, it's advancing so fast. We need to protect ourselves. I'll listen to the other comments. The only other comment I had was with regards to further on in your study, you talked about another disinfection instead of chlorine, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that when we get to it. But I'll let the other directors speak on these items right now.
Okay, Lane, you have concluded your assessment. Okay, Director Wilkins.
Thanks, Dale, and thanks, Tim. The question, Tim, related to the IT master plan that was, I think, a high priority recommendation. Is that how would you see that being done? Is that hiring a consultant to come in and look at our IT services, or is that Bob Gray being assigned a task to an IT master plan?
I would recommend you hire a specialized consultant specific to the water and wastewater industry to come in and do that. And I've talked with Dan Baker, who I mentioned as one of the key contributors to this. Has gone through that process, not himself, but has helped other agencies hire outside consultants to help do that. And similar to what's happening in the master plan and what's happening in the organizational assessment, it brings to light a lot of things that's happening in the world outside of TTSA that may not be easy to access. Right.
Got it. Okay. And then there was also a recommendation for a third-party owner advisor for the engineering manager. What could you describe that a little more?
Yeah. So right now, in working with Jay and the engineering staff, their ability to implement projects is limited. And one of the ways you get around, the overall volume of projects that could come out of the master plan across the whole plant is to have somebody help you manage, contractors and consultants and engineering designers through contract negotiations. If you wanted to go design build or other alternative delivery mechanisms, and an owner's advisor would step in and help you negotiate with those entities when you're talking about implementing large programs.
So that would be one way to go. Would another way to go be because there was a recommendation to hire another engineering position, as opposed to hiring an owner's advisor, would another option be to hire another engineer with experience in the areas you just described?
My recommendation is that you're probably going to need both of them. So right now, based on what I heard from Jay, the volume of work that they can do is on an annual basis is it's like about $500,000 worth of work. So they're treading water right now with implementing those types of projects. What's coming out of the master plan is going to be a significant volume of work, significantly greater than their ability to manage all of them at one time. So even if you add another engineering staff member, it increases your ability to implement projects, but you may need additional help to do that. My recommendation, Dan, would be to look at the capital improvement program that's coming out of the master plan, determine the annual cost, that we're anticipating for those projects moving forward. Take a look at what an additional staff member would add to the engineering team, and then make a decision on an owner's advisor type role as you look at the total volume of work.
Okay, and I may not have asked my question clearly. I think what I was intending to ask is, we could hire one additional engineer, or we could potentially hire a second new engineer as opposed to an owner's advisor.
Yeah, that's an option as well. Yeah.
Okay. A third question I've got comes back to the lab. So we've got this basically a new lab certification and qualification, regimen that is coming into effect, where the ELAP requirements are basically fading into the background, and the TNI requirements are going to be the new standard. And so there's going to be some amount of, so this goes into maintaining the lab in-house versus contracting for it, for lab services. So there's going to be, I'm assuming, some amount of new training, new certification investment if we maintain the lab in-house to get the in-house staff, I guess, in compliance with the TNI requirements or consistent with the TNI requirements, as opposed to a third-party lab, which apparently, presumably, they would be going through that same training process for their personnel. Do you have any sense, Tim, as to relative levels of efficiency? I don't have a good grasp on how much effort is involved in becoming TNI certified, and how much effort we could expect to put into that over a 3-year time period if we maintain the lab in-house.
Yeah, so we talked to a couple of agencies that have gone through it or are going through it right now. If I remember correctly, according to Steve, he estimated, a quarter of an FTE over, the course of the next 3 years in order to get that documentation, SOP development up to speed with what's required for TNI. I talked to the lab director down in South Tahoe, and they essentially kept a laboratory staff member on board in order to help facilitate that over the next couple of years. So it does require a significant amount of effort based on the research that we've done.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else there, Dan?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, Blake, you're on.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Tim, for the presentation. I think it's just some comments. I think it's great that the organization periodically sort of benchmarks itself. All organizations, I think, can become insular and possibly stray from, standards. And so it's kind of a good process, I think, to periodically go through a process like this and make sure that the organization is in line with industry standards. There's certainly limitations in benchmarking it to other organizations, because every agency is very, very unique. There is no other TTSA out there. You know, so many of them have multiple responsibilities, and so it's challenging to make those comparisons. But again, I think in general, an appropriate action on our part to do this. And another comment, you know, I was very heartened through your interview process to hear all those strengths, the pride of ownership, eager and energetic staff, talented, commitment to the agency, well-educated, willingness to do any project. That's great stuff to hear. And, you know, proud that that's the results that you found in talking to folks. So really nice to hear that. You know, jumping in a little bit to some of the recommendations and other stuff in the in your strengths, concerns, and opportunities reports in the operations department. You talk about opportunities to, you know, a lot of talk about optimization initiatives, refining key performance indicators, and publish optimization roles to demonstrate further optimization efforts. You know, I know that we receive what I would consider sort of key performance indicators on a monthly basis as part of these board packets. How, you know, maybe they're more effluent quality results, but I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on these key performance indicators that you're talking about in these optimization initiatives.
Yeah, you know, I think that the main takeaway there, Blake, was, you know, in general, we have operations management that evaluates the KPIs and looks at these key performance indicators, you know, across the industry. And you know, what I heard was that the operations staff was really interested in understanding how the agency was performing based on those indicators that are currently being monitored. And the communication across the range of operations staff was the piece that seemed to be, there seemed to be a disconnect. So it's like, if we're making operational changes and tracking them against these KPIs, how is that being communicated to the operations staff on the lower levels? So it's the communication across the board that I think was missing. So it's like, if we're making operational changes based on these KPIs, how does that get communicated down to the lower level staff so that they can understand the changes that are being made? I mean, that was the piece of it that was sort of missing on our end, you know. And so, yeah.
I guess can you, maybe I'm missing something. I mean, can you give a couple of examples of, you know, standard KPIs from operations that you're talking about? I mean, are we just talking effluent quality? Are they, what are these?
It's, you know, chemical usage, or, you know, anything across the board that operations uses to manage the plant, those types of things. You know, Steve's really the expert when it comes to discussing that stuff.
And then I assume the optimization efforts, you know, it all has to do also with the quality of the effluent as well.
Quality of the effluent, how you manage the plant, chemical cost, and those types of things. Yeah.
Let's see here. You know, the alternatives analysis that you did for the lab staff, I mean, I think to me it was missing, you know, sort of pros and cons of those. There seemed to be just stated what they are and then a cost associated with it. It goes way beyond just cost. There's a certain number of, you know, advantages and disadvantages associated with, you know, being fully staffed in-house to basically minimally staffed and relying on an outside agency and or testing laboratory, and that area to me needs to be certainly fleshed out in order to make a decision. I don't think that it should be an economic decision. I mean, certainly economics is part of it, but it's not the, it's not the only component when making a big decision like that. And so I don't know whether, that's something that, needs to be fleshed out as part of the report, or whether that's something that, I would want to see, and that, that would be done in-house or in consult with you guys. But certainly, I don't think that the alternatives 1, 2, and 3 are fleshed out enough based on the information we've got to make a really educated decision on how we would want to proceed with that.
Yeah, Blake, we did include some, our thoughts on strengths and weaknesses of, pros and cons of each one of those alternatives in the report. Obviously, just thinking through that, option 2 keeps more control and oversight of the agency. Some programmatic control is desired to, minimize loose ends and ensure the transition through ELAP to TNI. Option 1 eliminates, potential staff reductions, and, option 2 in theory costs less in the long run, but it does, it does provide the highest risk, similar to what Director Lewis was mentioning.
Jumping over to some of the other organizational recommendations, you talk about creating an accounting technician position, but that technician position already exists in the org chart. It's just increasing the number of incumbents in that position. Or is there a whole new set of skills and classifications associated with this proposed accounting technician position?
It's just like you said, increasing the number of incumbents in that position to handle the workload.
And then removing that administrative assistant position. I look at the org chart and I don't see, who answers the phone, and I know that there's probably not a lot of receptionist type duties. I don't think TTSA sees a lot of drop-in customers or probably a ton of inquiry from outside, but that's obviously typically what that admin assistant position would do. And I don't see with the elimination of that position, it wasn't clear to me who would take on those responsibilities. And so just something else, I think we need to take into consideration in doing that. I don't know whether you guys, that was discussed where those responsibilities would lie. Does that fall on an accounting person, or where that responsibility lies? Sorry, someone trying to call me and it blacked out my iPad. I don't want to pick it up. Sorry, guys. It's good timing there. I think, I guess another question following up on Dan's inquiry about this engineering, trying to remember the name of what you said, kind of assisting the agency. How is that different from our current relationship with CH2M Hill that seems to be on contract to provide design services, on a kind of on-call basis?
Well, the way that the agency operates now is, you come up with task orders and CH goes out and implements those task orders. And then the agency negotiates with contractors and that sort of thing. And the owner's advisor would come in and do the contract negotiations and help the agency manage that, especially if there was some alternative delivery process that was put into place. On larger programs for agencies that are dealing with several projects all at once across the plant, that format helps with the efficiency of project execution and allows engineering staff to focus on what's happening during construction, as opposed to contract negotiation and those types of things. I mean, can it be handled in-house? Sure, through similar recommendations that Dan had mentioned, but it provides the agency the ability to focus on the technical things as opposed to some of the other elements of it related to large program implementation.
Okay, I mean, it's something that we'll kind of see as the master plan rolls out. Dale, I think that's it for me for right now.
Okay, thank you, Blake. As far as for my comments, once again, I want to thank Tim and Dan and Steve for all their hard work and due diligence. My feeling on this whole organizational assessment, I have 3 main concerns as a director of the agency and a representative from Olympic Valley Public Service District. And the first and foremost concern for me is the safety and welfare of our employees, making sure that they maintain a safe work environment and that they perform their responsibilities and their job duties safely. The second thing is compliance. It is of utmost importance for the Tallow Truckee Sanitation Agency to be compliant, not most of the time, but all of the time. I think this is paramount in what we do as an agency. Over the last several months, we've had a lot of criticism and we've had a lot of comments, both at the member agencies and at the sanitation agency about compliance. So that is ranks at the very top also of my concerns as a director. And the third thing is our financial responsibility to the taxpayer. And for us to be able to perform the duties of the agency and be performing our duties in the best interest of the taxpayer, I think that conforming to our goals and objectives as an agency, our core values and our mission statement is something that we all ought to be very much aware of when we make the decisions moving forward. And I think that what we've done here as far as for hiring Carrillo and its staff to help us out with this, I think it's been a great move. It's been something that we've never done before, and it comes at a time when it can be most beneficial. So I thank everybody for their comments. Once again, Carrillo's staff, you've done a fabulous job in the presentation. And at this time, I'd like to open up to any comments or questions from the public. Rochelle?
Right now, I have a comment from Pippin Mater would like to make a public comment, and following Pippin will be Sarah Coolidge.
Great, thank you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. First, just really quickly, I wanted to respond to Dan about the TNI. Just TNI is a regulation that sits on top of ELAP requirements, so it's actually adopted by ELAP, and its goal is for greater data confidence and integrity. And so I just wanted to clarify that it essentially creates a lot more data documentation. It's similar to like an ASTM standard for materials. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Next, I did notice a couple of interesting things. One was that TTSA has no pretreatment program, which seems a little surprising. And I guess that's something I'd love to hear more about. The other is that TTSA seems to be fairly top heavy when I look at compared to other agencies. There's a lot of management compared to the number of staff. So those are just two things I noticed. I also want to point out that TTSA is somewhat unique. We discharge into the Truckee River, which is designated by the state as an impaired water body, and it's on their 303B list. Compare this to South Lake, for example, which pumps their effluent over the hill to Nevada, where the discharge permits are much, much more lax. So I think that very care should be taken when comparing those two. Also, as an environmental engineer and a regulator, I want to see compliance with the discharge permit. I really appreciate what you said about that, Dale. I'm 100% with you. I also want to say that our flow rates in the Tahoe-Truckee area vary greatly. You use 47,000 as your average, but clearly that varies huge. I think that the flow rates vary by an order of magnitude. I want to make sure that there's compliance even on the 4th of July and New Year's when there's 140 or 250 or however many thousand people all using the agency. So I think from my perspective, I really want to see this be TTSA be built for the worst case scenario. This organizational assessment is also interesting because it so clearly reflects TTSA management's current obsession with the laboratory, as shown by how much more detail is presented regarding the lab than any other department. I find it somewhat interesting that TTSA only has excess lab positions because they recently cut testing by about 70%. As I recall, you said October of 2019, but in 2019, late in 2019. And the results have been a whole slew of violations this summer. The problem is that when you cut lab testing down to the fewest tests required, your operators are essentially running the plant blind. And the direct result was all these violations. Contracting out labs will make it impossible to get timely results necessary if the agency wants to get things back on track. For example, this month, right, you had this violation because the building was was being worked on, and you had to send your results to Reno, and you lost that control, and so you didn't get the lab results back in time. Resolution. It appears to me that this assessment has parts of it designed to ignore the mission of the agency, that being clean sewage, and just to kind of rationalize what management wanted. And specifically regarding some of the specific lab-related suggestions, I will say that a bunch of them are either not feasible or already in place. And it appears that Corolla didn't talk to lab staff on with day-to-day knowledge of how things were done after these original interviews. It's also my understanding that ELAP does not have an ELAP certified staff with detailed knowledge of lab work on staff. I saw a lot of engineers, and I'm an engineer, and I appreciate engineers. But for example, I'm concerned that once again, the QuantiTrade tests were brought up for the NPN coliform testing. But again, it is my understanding that it is not allowed for wastewater, and that's because it gives false positives. It is an ELAP certified method, but only for drinking water. Based on public data of some of these tests the QuantiTrade tests that have been done, the results appear to be vary greatly and be sometimes an order of magnitude higher than the conventional test results. I'm concerned that Corolla is just following TTSA management instead of providing genuinely valuable input for the lab, especially. And this means the choice to push for, instead of pushing for more robust data, I'm concerned that it ends up with more violations and this never-ending stream of angry public commenters about compliance. The organizational assessment reflects this influence from management, and I'd like to see real care be taken in how you look at this, because it looks like it's a rationale for laying off staff that management doesn't like. As a member of the public, I'm all for efficiency, but the primary goal of the agency has to be compliance with environmental requirements first. I agree with Dale here. If this agency had a long and spotless track record of complying, then considering efficiency improvements might be appropriate. But based on the violations over the last few years and the explosion of violations this last summer and fall, this agency doesn't have a budget problem, they have a violation problem. And I ask the board to push the agency to fix the issues at TTSA in a way that is verifiable and in response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pippin. Rochelle, go ahead.
Sarah is going to attempt to use your microphone this month. Let's go ahead, Sarah.
How's that?
Perfect.
Ah, I figured it out. Fabulous. I'm Sarah Coolidge. I live in Tahoe Vista, and I want to thank you for giving me a chance to comment. Of course, I'm also on the North Tahoe Public Utility District Board. Thank you, board, and Board President Dale Cox for giving me a moment. I am glad that we have this report at last. It was really interesting to listen to, and I fully echo many of the comments that we already have heard. I would like to just ask one thing in particular, and I see that Tim is no longer visible, but if he can answer still, I would like to know, Tim, if it was you doing the interviews or if it was you and Dan and Steve in combination doing the interviews. And if you're not allowed to answer that question, that's fine. I'm going to assume it was some combination of the three of you. Is that accurate? Can you?
Yeah. I'm sorry. It was, I sat in on every interview, and it was a combination of me and Steve or me and Dan, or all three of us.
That's what I assumed. And thank you. And the rest of this is for the board, for the general manager. I'm referring to his page 6 of his report. And what I want to bring up is we have a couple things here where it says that every work group was interviewed and every person spoke up. And Tim said this was an honest and open discussion. And I want to remind all of you what we all know, which is when we are in groups, we don't necessarily say the same thing we would as if we were on our own, if we were anonymous, if we knew we were completely able to speak our minds. We also don't say the same things with people that we've just met, we don't know well, versus somebody who is a close friend who knows us inside and out. And I highly doubt, though I haven't confirmed, that Tim and Dan and Steve know all of these people well enough to be able to assert that this was an honest and open conversation. And I want to plant this in your mind as a board, because this is your responsibility to absorb this information and decide if it's enough for you. For over 2 years, I have talked with various people that I can see right now on this screen about the importance of doing an anonymous employee satisfaction survey to get at what people really think and feel in order for you to be able to truly address these concerns that keep coming back to you month after month, which we are continuously hearing are either someone's opinion or someone's retribution or someone's idea, and we just plain don't know until we do a survey like that. And again, I will say that I've asked for this for 2 years, and I do not want you as board members to believe that someone's opinion about how every person spoke up, how it was an honest and open discussion, means that you have that information yet, because I would argue you do not until you do an anonymous survey. And until then, you really will not know what people think that work for you. And it's just really important to get that information. That's all I want to point out today. I appreciate the chance to speak. I'm really glad that this report is here in front of you, and I will concur with those of you who say it's not quite enough. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else? Rochelle, you have the list?
No one else has emailed or typed on the board that they would like to speak. Is there anyone else on the public who would like to speak? Please speak up.
Seeing none and hearing none. At this time, We have heard all the concerns from the board of directors. We've heard concerns from the public in regards to this organizational assessment. At this time, I would like a motion from the board to approve and accept the organizational assessment.
Dale, if you don't mind, that's actually the next action item. Now that we've had public comment, did you want to circle back with the board to see if they wanted to add any additional comments of their own? If not, I'd like to follow up because I've heard some other things said by the board of directors that I wanted to follow up on and get some direction. So with that, I ask that maybe you circle back with the board.
Okay, thank you, LaRue. I'd be happy to do that. Any board members have any closing comments in regards to this organizational assessment? Go ahead, Lane.
Well, with regards to, basically, we're looking at the dominance in the report's been on the lab, and whatever we do, I mean, transparency, accountability, and compliance here are all what's talked about. Where are we going to get with the lab? Where are we going to get the best results for transparency, for accountability, and for compliance? That's the main thing, and that's how we should be looking at each alternative that is present here. And I think we need a lot more information before we can make any decision. I would like to know the discussion with the committee and where they felt, where you were after going over this and discussing it, what were your did you make any recommendations or have any insight as far as what direction you want to go, committee?
Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. We didn't believe we had been charged by the board with making a recommendation on whether to go to outsourcing, if you're talking specifically about the lab, about whether we were going to outsource the lab or keep it in-house or downsize it. I think it was at least my opinion and understanding that the board had asked us to provide insight from a director's standpoint into the organizational assessment so that when it came back to the full board, that it was a complete body of work that we could base future decisions on.
And I would, as part of the committee, I would echo everything that Dan has said as far as the office section, hiring new people and reorganizing the office and management. I think that LaRue has the ability to make that decision. If we have anything that's fallen short or need more staff, I think that LaRue has the ability to make that decision, and which would be in the best interest of the company. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add as far as for follow-up?
Just to follow up from me and in response to Lane's question, Dale, I also, from my perspective, equal attention was given to all functional divisions of the organization. As to the lab, there was a couple of comments earlier that there was a inordinate amount of focus on the lab. From my perspective, on the ad hoc committee, I was interested in making sure there was an equal degree of focus on each of the divisions. And, that's why we've got recommendations regarding an IT specific plan and adding IT staff. That's why we have recommendations regarding areas for modified staffing in or models in the administrative support portions of the organization. That's why there's recommendations in there related to other process improvements. So I don't necessarily subscribe to the notion that this was all about the lab. I think the lab was one of many things that were being considered by Carollo in this effort.
Well put, Dan. David Smeltzer, follow-up questions or comments? You're good. Okay, Blake, any follow-up questions or comments?
Dale, not really. Well, I guess the question has to do with, and I know the next item is accepting the report, but just clarifying again, you know, what that means. The consultant's report has a bunch of recommendations ranked in urgency from, you know, low, medium, and high. I understand that the staff summary says accepting the report basically is saying Carollo has completed their work, but when we accept this report, are we effectively saying we agree with all these recommendations and you know, management has, we're directing management to proceed with those. And, you know, in the one case of the laboratory where there's, you know, alternatives and we haven't clearly made any determination on that, is that still part of the scope of work that we want to have them do? Or is that, you know, something that is no longer within Carollo's purview and is going to be, you know, dealt with somehow in-house as we flesh that out? So I just want to be clear on, you know, what the consequences of accepting the report might be and what the next steps would be associated with that before, you know, we take any motion to accept it or not.
You know, Blake, you make an interesting point there. What I want to make clear for myself in regards to accepting this report, I'm hoping that Tim, Dan, and Steve does not abandon us as far as any follow-up questions or recommendations in regards to potentially implementing and you know, following up with changes in how we run our organization. Dan, Tim, and Steve, I'm hoping that by accepting this report doesn't preclude you guys from helping us out with any questions or further investigation in implementation.
No, yeah, we're here to help however we need to, Dale.
Okay. Okay.
So in, I guess in my mind, acceptance of the report would be us as a board acknowledging that Carollo has completed the work scope that we hired them to do. And it's not necessarily us making a decision that we're going to implement every single recommendation that they've made. You know, that's their recommendation as a third party expert. And then we need to look at that, I think, as a board in conjunction with our internal expertise, you know, from our staff, and decide, you know, which of those recommendations we want to move forward to implement, which of those areas we want to collect more information, either with assistance from Carollo or by tasking staff to do some additional analysis. And I guess that's how I see us using the report. So from my perspective, accepting the report means that we're agreeing that Carollo has completed the work scope we've asked them to do, that we're not making a decision that we're implementing every single recommendation that's in that report. That's a future action for a combination of the board and or staff to take.
Very good, Dan. With that in mind, Anything follow up, LaRue, that you want to make clear to the board and the public?
Yeah, what you're saying is correct on the acceptance. It's nothing more than confirming that the scope of work has been fulfilled by Corello. There's been a lot of questions on the board here that would require us to work in conjunction with them to get some more information, such as pros and cons. So I'm glad to hear that Tim will work with us on that so we can do so as well. And that can be done in-house here. There's been a lot of recommendations here that I think staff needs to go through, analyze, provide a recommendation, and return back to the board. For instance, we have recommendations for new positions. I think in order for us to take that into consideration, we need to prepare job descriptions for them, prepare salary schedules for them, obtain salaries for them. There's recommendations on staffing alternatives for the laboratory. I'd like to staff and review all of those alternatives and then return next month with the board with a recommendation so the board can chime in on that. So there's also other recommendations there that I do not think require the board's approval. So what I'd like to do is to accept again at the next agenda item here, again, which just confirms that Corello has completed the scope of work for the organizational assessment. Return next month with more detail on supporting data for all the recommendations, identifying which ones we agree with internally here, how to implement them, and receive approval for those that we think that are appropriate for the board to act on for action.
Okay, thank you very much, LaRue. If there are no further follow-up questions or comments at the board level for this presentation, I'd like a motion to approve and accept the organizational assessment as presented.
I'll make that motion that we accept the organizational report by Corello as presented.
A second by Smeltzer.
Yes.
No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smeltzer,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is approve the award of pump and power pack project.
Jay, would you mind taking that item for me, please?
Yep, no problem. Good morning, directors. Before you today is a recommendation to award the purchase for a submersible pump and power pack project. The background of this is that we had rented a piece of equipment to drain and clean our digesters. We've been doing this job in-house for probably about 10 years. We used to contract this work out, and we've saved quite a bit of money to the tune of about $100,000 each time we clean the digester. And we've always struggled with the right equipment to properly clean the digester. We have great success with this unit, and it's something that we actually probably have a lot of projects around the plant that we could use in addition to cleaning the digesters. It's very different than any equipment that we currently have. We went out to bid, we publicly advertised. We received one bid from Pack Machine Company, an amount of $72,134.03. There was a minor irregularity discovered in adding up the prices on the bid tab, very similar to what happened last month. The bidder included shipping and taxes in that final total bid price. And we got clarification during bid. So it's recommended that the board waive this irregularity and that the bid be considered responsible, and that management and staff recommend approval to waive that irregularity and award to Pack Machine Company in the amount of $72,134.03.
Jay, I have a question.
Sure.
With regards to the, with this trash pump, I mean, hydraulically driven, I mean, how heavy is this thing?
So why it's unique is that the engine sits on a trailer outside of the digester, and its impeller sits in the digester with hydraulic hoses that connect the two. So you end up with equipment that is easily removed, in and out of the basin you're trying to clean. Well, the heaviest piece, the engine and trailer, is sitting on the road, on the ground.
So how many, I mean, what's the horsepower of the pump on this to pull the debris out of the digester to clean it? I mean, is it, is this one easily able to disinfect when you're not using it or after you've used it?
Yeah, so it's 49 horsepower. So it's under the 50 limit, for some of the emissions standards. It's 700 gallons per minute. It's got a slurry gate, so you can direct flow different directions. So you'd be able to flush, the pump after we use it into one of our basins. We don't intend on using any kind of drinking water situation. It's all going to be in sewage related applications. And we have facilities here at the plant that we can clean this equipment.
Okay, my question, I mean, you answered that question because, I mean, you talked about portable, and a 49 horsepower pump is not necessarily portable, but it's on a trailer, so you're moving it around, and it can be used all over the plant and has more than one function. That's it's a great purchase. And I'll make the motion to go forward with that purchase.
Okay, before we accept the motion, David, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah. Question, what is the estimated maintenance costs and repair costs to this device?
Okay, Richard, do you want to chime in on what, I know you've had some experience with similar type equipment down south?
Yeah, I can chime in. Very minimal. They're very robust. We could get several digester cleanings done with the gritty material before an impeller replacement would need to be done. And an impeller replacement would be probably in the neighborhood of $1,000, all materials included. But we're talking years of probably years of reliable service before any major work would need to be done to it.
Good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Blake, any comments?
Jay, if I remember correctly, the board recently approved and staff acquired a couple other portable pumps, maybe more for, bypassing the TRI, but how does this pump really materially differ from the, significant portable pump purchase we just made? And could this pump also be used to perform the function of those other pumps?
Yeah, so first off, just a lot smaller and more of a specialized use. This is designed for tricky applications like the digesters that we're contemplating using for the most part. But the other is more in equipment configuration and assembly. So the pumps that we recently acquired, the Godwins, for emergency bypass purposes, a close coupled system where you got the impeller right up against the engine, all on a single trailer that you can wheel down the highway and go to a site. The key difference on this piece of equipment is that your hydraulic end is completely independent of your engine and trailer. So it allows you to. The tricky thing about the digester is that how do you get equipment into it successfully, because it's such an awkward entry and exit out of the digester, and you have quite a big difference. So we've looked at all kinds of different configurations, and we've landed on this as being kind of an ideal configuration where you can separate those two pieces and come up with something that's practical to use around the plant.
Jay, it sounds similar to what maybe we have here, our Stanley pumps. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that we use off the hydraulics on some of our field equipment. How far away can you run that impeller from the hydraulic motor? Are you limited in the distance? Are you talking about parking this at the base of a digester, running the hydraulic hoses all the way up to 40-foot height and then back down to the bottom of this thing, like 100-foot runs?
Yeah. So the exact length, I'd have to look at the spec. I don't have it offhand, but I do know that we used this identical unit at the digesters last year. And yeah, that's exactly it. The pump sits off to the side of the digester, and then the hoses run down into the digester, down to the bottom to where the impeller is located.
Sounds like I know we utilize our Stanley pumps. It sounds like they're on the same principle and a valuable piece of equipment for us in dewatering some of our facilities. So sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Blake. Dan Wilkins, any follow-up comments or questions?
None, thank you.
Okay, we've had thorough discussion on the management recommendation to approve and waive the minor bid irregularity. We have a motion on the floor from Director Lewis. We need a second.
Can I comment as a member of the public or no?
I'm going to allow you, Pippin. It's a little out of normal procedure, but go ahead.
I appreciate it, Dale. Thank you. I just wanted to ask a little bit about the engine's emission standards. I understand under 50 horsepower that you can kind of skirt a bunch of those rules, but just from an environmental perspective, having a Tier 4 compliant engine is the most environmentally responsible, and I would encourage the agency to buy diesel engines that are Tier 4 compliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippin. Motion on the floor, and we need a second.
I saw Director Tresson raise his hand for a second, unless he had another comment as well.
I'll second. Jay, you don't mention what tier it is in reference to Pippin's comment. Is this a Tier 4 diesel motor?
Yes, it is Tier 4.
Okay, thank you. I'll second the motion.
Okay, we are in compliance environmentally. Jay, correct?
Yes.
Yes, the engine is Tier 4, which meets the standard of the day.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving on with the agenda. This is item V1, department projects or department reports. What's up, operations?
Good morning, Board of Directors. Michael Peak, operations. The operation report for the
I'm sorry, Michael. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're having a hard time hearing you. Perhaps you can try to get a little bit closer to the microphone.
And David and Dale, maybe you guys could mute. It might be coming back through your system.
It might be Dan. Sometimes we get more feedback from Dan. There it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start over. Good morning, Board of Directors, President Cox, Michael Peak, Operations Department Manager, Operations Department report for the month of October. compliance, all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. Operations report, overall, the plant performed well through the month. Staff prepared operations for winter months. After 70 days of adding caustic to the final effluent at a set point of 7.5 pH units, the last 4 weeks, pH, well 31 pH has averaged about a 6.5 units. Staff is moving forward with State Water Resources Control Board requirements for pre and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFASs or PFAS testing. Operators continue to train with the lab chemists for the weekend laboratory testing. Laboratory report. Staff performed necessary laboratory testing per WDR requirements and operational needs for the month of October. Last month, it was reported that the laboratory director had deemed the THM testing to be inaccurate as the collection process was incorrect. Upon further inquiry, it was found that the THMs had been collected and tested as required, and the corresponding result was a 12.4 parts per billion, and that was reported to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, that the THM result was correction. Lab staff is moving forward with the State Water Resources Control Board requirements for pre and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS testing. So operations in the lab are working in conjunction to facilitate that. And staff continue to train operations for the weekend testing. Work orders completed this month, 5, pending 5. And you can see that the plant data, corresponding plant data following for the monthly average flows, max flows, and 7-day average flows. And then also that the effluent limitation descriptions, all the requirements were met for the month. Do you have any questions for the operations department? You muted, Dale. There you go.
Go ahead, Lane.
You know, it was brought up under comments earlier. Can you address the flow meter calibration requirements that haven't been done in 8 years?
To address the influent flow data that we report, we had done a calibration in February, and we zeroed that flow meter, and it was found to be off of its setting. And it's been calibrated, and we're receiving accurate flow data from that flow meter.
Was it off for 8 years?
That flow meter in the past had not been zeroed. It had been checked for accuracies from my understanding, but had not been zeroed. And that zeroing of that flow meter showed the discrepancy.
Okay.
8 years, I believe.
Thank you.
Period of time, yes.
If I can add to that, I think what some of the discussion has been is, according to our WDR, we're supposed to calibrate a flow meter upstream of any process that we have at the treatment plant. When the plant was built and improvements were put in, there is no flow meter that meets that WDR requirement. So essentially, we cannot test in accordance with the WDR requirement because our flow meter is downstream of the Headworks project. It'll still obtain the same results that we need. But my perception is what you're hearing now is that when this plant was upgraded or built in the 70s and upgrades in 2002, that the flow meter was not placed in accordance with the WDR, or the WDR was not written to match what was constructed. Obviously, both entities work together, meaning the State Board and TTSA. So I just wanted to add that in because I think that's some of the positions and conversations I've heard likewise.
So LaRue, the flow meter, the purpose of that is to identify the volume of effluent entering the plant, correct?
Correct.
Influence.
And so I think what you just said is the positioning of the current flow meter is it's kind of within the plant process as opposed to immediately upstream of the plant. Is that what I understood?
Correct. It's immediately after the Headworks, which does not remove volume, a considerable amount of water volume. Correct.
So it's collecting the same data in terms of if the goal is to understand what the effluent flow into the plant is, you're saying the positioning of the current flow meter gives us that information, even though it's if you look at the letter of the WDR, it would suggest that the flow meter be moved to another location where it would be collecting the same information.
Correct.
Okay, so that's one issue. So that's an issue that's related, but different than the accuracy of the flow meter.
Correct. So we're talking about compliance with the WDR and then how we maintain the accuracy of it. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Just on that topic, the plant has a flow limitation. And if I'm not mistaken, while the meters were possibly out of calibration, they were overestimating the volume of wastewater coming into the plant, and yet we still never had any violations in terms of flow. And so now that they're calibrated, we're actually seeing that we're having less flow. I could see how it would be a concern if they were underestimating the flow and we thought we were in compliance, but in fact, maybe the flows were over that. But they were always the more, conservative result was that you were seeing what you thought were more wastewater coming into the plant than was actually coming into the plant. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, so that's an important to note also. You guys were being overly conservative in terms of saying, you thought more wastewater was coming in, and so there was never any concern of an actual violation in terms of flow limits from the fact that the meter was out of calibration.
Yes. And we are working with the State Water Resources Control Board to make sure that we are in compliance, that we're meeting all the requirements that they have of us. We're going to be meeting with them about the influent flow, all the flow meters, and we'll be moving forward with that to try to make any corrections that need to be made to make sure that we're providing the most accurate and best data as possible.
And Mike, going back to Jane Davis's comment about the $1,000 a day, $3.5 million sum of things, is there any indication that the regional board is going to pursue fines for the meter?
Nothing that I've heard of through conversations at this point, no.
Okay. While I've got the microphone on, I wondered if, I don't want to belabor this, but just you've highlighted in your report these per and polyfluoral alkyl substance testing, PFAS. Can you give just a real quick thing? Why is that being highlighted on the report? What are those, and why are you drawing attention to it?
So basically, this is an order from the State Water Resources Control Board. This is a substance in wastewater that they're trying to get measurements of for. They're associated to like the aqueous foam fighting foams, Teflons, stuff like those types of things. My understanding is typically in areas where they have Air Force bases or areas that they have industry where they're doing, the coating fry pans and stuff like that, that these substances are very small and minute, and they're trying to figure out and get some criteria and some baseline on where they are. And so they picked certain areas, and they're asking the agencies with certain flows and certain treatment types to look into this. So what it is it's going to last about 12 months. So they're asking us to do quarterly samples on our influent, effluent, and our digested cake every quarter. And then during that 12-month period, one time we have to go to 3 of our monitoring wells, and we get a sample and we send it in. We're outsourcing the The laboratory results will be produced from Babcock Laboratories, is the lab that we picked to send the samples off to. There's a lot that, you have to do blanks, you have to wear certain clothes. You want to make sure you don't contaminate the samples when you take it. So that's why I kind of pointed it out, is that it's just something that that we're moving forward with as ordered by the state.
And so it's ordered, it's not a voluntary participation in a study. But we are unique in being targeted to do this. It's not being required of all treatment plants.
That was my understanding, is that it's not all treatment plants, but they have specified specific treatment plants, and we happen to be one of them.
Thanks, Mike.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jay. Moving along to
Dale, I'm sorry. We have someone that would like to make a public comment. Would you like them to allow that, or wait till the end of all department reports?
let's go ahead with all the department reports, and we'll field any questions or comments at the end.
Thank you.
Okay, the next report is going to be Richard, maintenance.
Morning, President Cox and Board of Directors. Just want to highlight a few projects. We've wrapped up the painting project and our support for that this year, as well as the digital scanning. Had one individual working with the contractor through that project. Do want to note a typo on my report. It said we completed the root ball removal. That should be manhole 86 and 87, not 81 and 82. So we got rid of that small to medium-sized root ball out of there, so that's taken care of. Did some work on secondary clarifiers, some of that related to the painting project, some of it was just normal maintenance repair as we pulled them down. Wrapped up the filter number 4 isolation valve project. That's been a project that's been going for a couple of years between a couple filters. Tried our hand at some hot patch. You saw a picture in the report of that one. Came out okay. The other big project I want to highlight is the BNR supply water VFDs. We've completed the first one with the assistance of IT. It's online and has been running flawless. The second one is installed and will be going through startup this Monday. We've completed our annual fire alarm inspection via JCI, our on-site contractor. And then as far as work orders, we completed mechanically 59, fleet had 12, E&I 24. We're still pending 109 in mechanical, 20 in fleet, and 48 in E&I. I expect those numbers to come down for E&I and fleet. Our fleet guy was the one working the digital scanning project. You will see a rise in the mechanical next month because we did our safety audit and we've identified a handful of items, mostly minor, that are going to increase that number. So wanted to give you a heads up on that one. Pretty much wraps up the report. If you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions for Richard? Seeing none, hearing none. What's up?
I had a real quick one. Just where is the manhole 81, 82?
81 and 82 is actually up further up where we did the pipeline project about a year and a half ago. 86 to 87, which where the root ball actually was, is Granite Flats.
Okay, it sounded familiar. I just wanted to make sure we didn't already have roots in the line that we just replaced.
No, it was in my mind, and that's what I wrote down instead of where we were actually at.
Okay, thanks, Richard.
Jay, you're on.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So in the month of October, engineering staff continue to work on a long list of projects here, about 15 different projects. And the one that's most obvious is the admin building remodel, where Michael and I are actually sitting in one of the finished rooms here, almost finished room. So that is expected to wrap up within the next few weeks. I'm happy to elaborate on any of these projects that you'd like to know more information on, and work orders, engineering, no current work orders for that department, and then safety, one work order completed. Are there any questions about any of the projects listed?
Any questions for Jay?
I got a question for Jay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lane.
And, in the Carrillo report, it talked about it, here again, it was brought up by its outside member last time about with the chlorine scrubber improvement project. And in that Carrillo report, it talked about, using another disinfectant and the actual labor savings down the road on that. And, I know we approved that, but did we ever, is Carrillo coming out, Jay, in that report, a recommendation as far as the use of chlorine or a different alternative, or giving us an alternative to evaluate with regards to chlorine in that master plan?
So what's in the CIP right now in the draft, or I should say draft master plan, is a evaluation of alternative disinfectants for use at the agency. That study needs to occur first, and then the evaluations of the alternatives needs to occur, so we select one, an alternative, and then we move forward with pre-design, final design, construction, etc. So we have a timeline that could be a number of years here. And in the meantime, we have a scrubber that needs replacement now. And so regardless of what alternative we pick, we need to replace the scrubber. And it's also, keep in mind that it may end up not being money down the drain, because even under some of the disinfection alternatives, a disadvantage of many of them are they don't leave a residual in the water. And we have a lot of uses, for example, for reclaimed water around the plant. And to some degree, we will need a residual. We will need to produce a residual in the water, which means to some degree, we're going to have some kind of disinfectant, which could very likely be a smaller quantity of chlorine, or, kind of like a swimming pool level or whatever. But so you might end up having to need, very likely end up having to need this scrubber for the long term anyway. But regardless of that, we need the scrubber now.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we look, that we're down the road, that we're looking at all alternatives down the road for long-term benefits of the process at the plant. That's all.
Any further questions or comments for Jay and engineering? Seeing none, hearing none. What's up, Bob? Bob Gray, where are you?
Got it. Good morning, members of the board. The IT department has continued to fill the IT needs of the member departments in a mostly remote capacity, coming in when necessary. Last month, we launched the operations plant logbook web portal. After a few modifications following the release, the application has been running smoothly, and all the past log entries from the beginning in 2003 to the present have been successfully transferred and updated. We assisted the E&I department, much with what Richard was saying, in getting the first of 3 BNR influent pump VFDs installed and integrated into our plant control system. The pump has been in service for the past 2 weeks. We are slated to install the number 2 pump early next week. We have performed our second round of interviews with the candidates for the position of IT specialist. We have made an offer to the candidate we deemed as a best fit, and we are currently waiting for the candidate's response and a decision on an acceptance. That's about it. If you have any other questions.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I have a question, Bob. With regards to the Carrillo report, it emphasized cybersecurity there. What's your outlook, and is the new individual coming on? Could he help us with that respect, or is that outsourcing type of job that's going to be required to, have that security at the plant?
Yeah, got it. I think we should wait till we see how the plant and management wants to deal with the master plan of the IT and the organizational assessment before we really you can start, placing the responsibilities on our current staff.
Okay, what did you develop any, reading that Carrillo report, and especially obviously the IT end of it? I mean, what was your biggest take as far as urgency, what the agency needs with regards to IT?
I mean, we don't have any formal document that we follow, but we do maintain, we do maintain and update our firewalls and, and different accesses into the plant with, regarding our Wi-Fi. We have, our security set for file access by having, by having incremental backups that are on cloud-based servers. So, so my urgency of it is probably not as high as what Carrillo reported, but that's just, that's just my opinion though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
anyone else for IT comments? Seeing none and hearing none. Rochelle, how are you?
I am wonderful, Dale. Thank you for asking. I am, well, good afternoon or almost noon, Board of Directors. I am reporting to you live today from the Administrative Department container due to the relocation from the Administrative Remodel Project that Jay was speaking of earlier. That has been the main focus, not the main focus, but a lot of my time has been spent on that project this month. So hopefully next month we'll be reporting from the new boardroom or the newly remodeled boardroom. All of the furniture has been ordered, and I have been going in there pretty much daily, keeping an eye on it and making sure that Scott and Aaron are taking good care of it for you. So they have done a great job and it looks beautiful. So I can't wait for you guys to be able to come back and see it with your own eyes. It looks great. But as for our department, we're steady, busy, taking care of regular administrative business and wrapping up the audit with DeMoore, Hamrick, and Schneider. And other than that, I have nothing additional to report unless you have any questions regarding the documentation I provided in this month's report or financial statements.
Any comments? Any questions? Seeing none and hearing none. General Manager, comments?
Yeah, Bill, did you want to go to public comment regarding the department reports, or defer it after all management reports?
Well, we're just about there. You're about the last of the department comments. So if you have any comments, we'll address them now, and then I'll allow public comment.
Sure. I just wanted to highlight a couple things on the report here. On one of the final attachments is our agency CalPERS health benefit summary. As you recall, last month or a couple months ago, we adopted resolution 1220, which allowed staff to choose their health care. Also, as part of that resolution, staff was able to benefit from receiving 50% of the savings from the premium and put it to the HRA. So what we have here is a summary of it. I just wanted to point out that overall there was a savings of approximately $200,000 to the agency from staff decisions to move from a CalPERS care plan, a PERS care plan, to a lesser plan. And because of that change in savings, the agency saved approximately $104,000, and likewise so did the staff. So I thought that was a benefit that all staff was able to receive, and I thought it was a good motion, and it was good to see that all staff did participate and take advantage of that. I also wanted to point out that this board packet, we didn't have acknowledgements and awards and anniversary section. That was not an oversight. There just were none. But that will be brought back at the next board meeting because we will have some at that point. And additionally, in light with the recent CDC order for the face mask, and because of all of the COVID rises, staff will be complying with that as well. So with that, I have nothing else to add other than what's in the general manager right now. And I'll take any questions you might have, Dale on the board.
Anyone for general manager?
Just to comment, Dale and LaRue, thanks for putting that table together showing the changes that occurred through our CalPERS Health through the open enrollment process. I'm impressed that 20 out of 45, or I'm not sure how many total employees we have right now, but a fairly significant participation in that program. And I know that didn't get rolled out, but weeks or so before the open enrollment period. So good job on you, and I'm sure Vicki in terms of educating staff, and nice to see over $100,000 in benefits realized by the agency, and hopefully staff pleased with their options and the ability to utilize those health dollars in their HRA. So
thank you.
Okay, this concludes the department reports. I'll open it up to any questions or comments from the public.
First, we had a public comment from Pippin Mater.
Great. Can you guys hear and see me?
Yes.
Perfect. I just had a couple of quick comments. One was about the operations report. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the calibration, the flow meter calibration. While I understand what you were talking about, Blake, that as it was tested in February, it was under measuring flow, but the whole point of calibration is to understand what's happening with it. And while that spot check showed that over the last 9 years, we don't actually know whether it was under measuring or over measuring. I would argue that's the entire purpose of calibrations. And then regarding the engineering, I want to thank Lane for asking about UV disinfectant. As you guys all know, it's a topic near and dear to my heart. And I'm looking forward to having a more detailed discussion on this and possible digester improvements and use of waste gas as part of that master plan that's coming up. And then finally, I did want to bring back up the issue of retiree health benefits that was discussed in September, as I recall. I know that was discussed last meeting also, and there's some discussion about 1 month, 3 months soon, when that's going to happen. But I'd just like to bring that back up and encourage that to be on the agenda soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pippin. Rochelle, anyone else?
Yes, we also have a comment from Jane Davis. Ms. Davis, if you're still with us, you'd like to make a comment? Ms. Davis, looks like you're muted. If you'd like to unmute yourself. Ms. Davis, if you're there, you're muted.
I think she may have left, or at least is no longer in front of her computer.
Okay.
How you doing, Richard? Good to see you.
Okay. Looks like
Hang in there, thank you.
she doesn't have connection anymore or has left. Ms. Davis, oh, here she goes. Okay, Ms. Davis, go ahead. Sorry, not hearing you. Ms. Davis, we cannot hear you at all. I'm not sure if you're having technical difficulties, but we cannot hear you at all.
If Ms. Davis wants to make any of her public comments as part of the public record, hopefully she can go ahead and write them down and submit them to you, Rochelle, and we will see to it that they will be entered into the record. At this time, all the agenda items have been addressed. And as far as anything else to be brought before this November the 18th, 2020 meeting, if there's no further questions, comments, or contributions to this meeting, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Dale, I still think we have an item for board of director comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. David, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I'm good. But Dale, give me a call after the meeting whenever you can.
Okay, thank you. I will.
And don't forget, we have closed session and you have the call-in information inside your binder for that.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, Lane, any other comments?
Yeah, President Cox. And, regards to the Carrillo report, excellent work gone forward. I hope we, as all directors, go deep into it, that we get information out of there to where we can make decisions and ask for further information to help us with these staffing decisions down the road. But, always remember, and I just want to emphasize, whatever we do, we got, compliance, transparency, and accountability as in the process. So word gets out, it's open to everybody, and people can see the reasons and the whys while we're making decisions. And I think that's so apparent, so true as far as getting the transparency as far as this district out to the public. And I think it's very valuable. Thank you.
Hey, Dan, any director's comment?
Thanks, Dale. Only that if we need to keep Carrillo on retainer, I think they've completed their initial work scope to get us the organizational assessment. And depending on how much additional time we're asking them to work with us on the implementation phases, we shouldn't be bashful about putting them on retainer if we need to pay them a couple bucks to have them available for that process.
Is that it, Dan?
That's it. Thank you.
You bet. Blake, follow-ups?
No, thanks, Dale.
Okay, I have no further comments under director's comments, so I think that it is in order for us to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
It's been moved by Director Lewis, seconded by Director Schmelzer.
Yep.
All in favor, roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Schmelzer,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn is approved.
Everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
And if you need me to resend you the closed session information, please let me know and I can do so for you right away.
We're logging on right now, right, for closed session?
How about we adjourn for 5 minutes and then we'll log on?
If you need a 5-minute break, and we'll get you started.
Thank you. See you guys then.
Have a great one.